The rain-slicked streets of Seattle's International District gleamed under the sodium glow of street lamps, the air thick with the scent of sizzling teriyaki from nearby vendors and the faint briny tang of Puget Sound drifting in from the waterfront. It was just past 7 on a drizzly Tuesday evening, the kind where umbrellas bloomed like black mushrooms and pedestrians hurried with collars turned up against the chill. Mia Chen, a 28-year-old waitress at the dim sum joint 2 blocks over, wiped the steam from her glasses as she stepped out of her shift. Her apron still tied loosely around her waist. Her feet ached from 8 hours on the linoleum, ferrying plates of pork buns and congee to tourists who mangled the menu pronunciations. She paused at the crosswalk on King Street, waiting for the light to change. Traffic hummed past. Delivery vans, a couple of ride shares, the occasional sleek black SUV that screamed corporate excess. Across the street, an elderly Korean woman in a faded hanbok shuffled toward the curb. Her steps tentative on the uneven sidewalk. She clutched a worn canvas bag to her chest, her silver hair pinned back with a simple jade clip, and her eyes, sharp despite the lines etched around them, scanned the road with quiet determination. The light turned green, but the woman hesitated, glancing left and right as a pickup truck barreled through the intersection a beat too late. Without thinking, Mia darted across. "Hey, ma'am, let me help," she said, slipping an arm under the woman's elbow. The fabric of the hanbok was cool and damp from the mist, smelling faintly of jasmine tea and mothballs. The old lady looked up, her face creasing into a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, dear. These legs aren't what they used to be." Her English carried a soft accent, the words measured and polite. Mia guided her across, dodging a puddle that reflected the neon sign of a karaoke bar. On the other side, the woman patted Mia's hand. "Bless you. My name is Mrs. Kim. You work nearby?" Mia nodded, adjusting her bag strap. "Yeah, at Golden Lotus. Just finished my shift." She didn't mention the tips that barely covered rent for her cramped apartment above a laundromat, or the stack of medical bills from her mom's last hospital stay. Small talk was her job, after all. Mrs. Kim's eyes lingered on her for a moment, appraising, before she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, lacquered box. "For your kindness. It's nothing much, a little tea from home." Mia started to protest, but the woman pressed it into her palm. "Take it. Good fortune follows those who help the elderly." Before Mia could respond, a low rumble cut through the patter of rain. A convoy of vehicles pulled up to the curb with predatory precision. 2 unmarked sedans flanking a polished Lincoln town car, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlights like obsidian. Doors opened in unison, and out stepped 4 men in tailored suits, their postures rigid, earpieces glinting under the lamps. They moved like shadows, scanning the area with practiced efficiency. No drawn weapons, but the bulge of holsters was unmistakable beneath their jackets. The rear door of the Lincoln swung open, revealing a man who commanded the scene without a word. He was in his mid-40s, broad-shouldered and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that hugged his frame, a silk tie the color of midnight. His hair was cropped short, streaked with silver at the temples, and a faint scar traced his jawline, pulling his expression into something perpetually watchful. This was Hiroshi Tanaka, though Mia wouldn't know that yet, the Oyabun of the Tanaka Gumi, a Yakuza faction that controlled the ports from Seattle to Vancouver with an iron grip on shipping manifests and discreet alliances. Whispers in the district called him the Shadow Broker, a man who turned rival crews into ghosts through logistics alone, never a bullet wasted. Tanaka's dark eyes locked onto Mrs. Kim first, softening imperceptibly. He approached with measured steps, his polished loafers silent on the wet pavement. "Obasan," he said in Japanese, bowing slightly. The old woman, Mrs. Kim, but clearly more to him, replied in kind, her voice steady as she gestured toward Mia. Tanaka turned, his gaze shifting to the waitress like a spotlight. "You assisted her." His English was flawless, clipped with authority, carrying the weight of someone unused to questions. Mia swallowed, her pulse quickening under the scrutiny of the entourage. The air felt heavier now, charged with unspoken stakes. "Yeah, just crossing the street. No big deal." One of the suits, a lawyer type, briefcase in hand, his face pale and bespectacled, stepped forward, flipping open a leather folder. "Miss Chen, is it? We're here on behalf of Mr. Tanaka. Mrs. Kim is family. Your action today warrants our gratitude and protection." Protection. Mia's mind raced. The tea box felt heavy in her pocket, an absurd anchor in the surreal moment. She glanced at Mrs. Kim, who nodded encouragingly, but there was a flicker in the old woman's eyes, something like apology or warning. Tanaka's men fanned out subtly, one murmuring into his radio, another eyeing the alley across the street where a homeless man had paused too long in the shadows. "I don't understand," Mia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Why lawyers? What's going on?" Tanaka's lips curved into a ghost of a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "In our world, debts are not forgotten. You helped someone precious to me. Now dinner. We discussed terms." It wasn't a request. The lawyer was already handing her a card, embossed with a discreet crest, a stylized koi amid waves. The convoy idled, exhaust curling like smoke signals. As Mia hesitated, the distant wail of a siren echoed from the waterfront, unrelated but amplifying the tension. She thought of her empty apartment, the unanswered calls from debt collectors, the quiet life she'd carved out amid the district's undercurrents. Curiosity warred with caution. Why her? What terms could a street-crossing kindness possibly demand? Tanaka extended a hand, not touching her, but the gesture closed the distance. "Come. It's safer that way." In the rear view of a passing car, Mia didn't notice the faint glint of a camera lens from a rooftop across the street, capturing the exchange for an unseen audience. Who had tipped them off so quickly, and what favor had Mrs. Kim truly called in? The rain had picked up as Mia slid into the back seat of the Lincoln, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed in her chest. The leather interior enveloped her like a glove, cool, supple, scented with polished wood and a hint of sandalwood cologne that must have been Tanaka's. He settled beside her, not too close, but his presence filled the space, a gravitational pull that made the air feel thinner. Across from them, the bespectacled lawyer, Mr. Ellis, according to his card, adjusted his tie and tapped at a tablet, while Mrs. Kim took the forward-facing jump seat, her canvas bag now tucked at her feet. The convoy pulled away smoothly, the sedans sandwiching them like silent guardians, their tires hissing over the wet asphalt of King Street. Mia gripped the lacquered tea box in her lap, its edges digging into her palms. "This is all happening too fast," she said, her voice cutting through the low hum of the engine. The city lights blurred past the tinted window, neon signs from pro shops and jade emporiums flickering like distant fireflies. "I just helped someone cross the street. I'm not in any trouble, am I?" Tanaka's gaze remained forward, watching the side mirror where one of his men in the trailing sedan spoke into a radio. "Trouble finds those who matter," he replied evenly, his accent threading the words like silk over steel. "Mrs. Kim is my aunt by marriage, widowed long ago from Busan. She lives quietly here, but eyes are always watching. Rivals, old debts." He didn't elaborate, but the weight of it hung there, unspoken logistics of a world where family ties were both armor and target. Mrs. Kim reached over, patting Mia's knee with a gnarled hand. "You have kind eyes, child, like my late niece. Hiroshi doesn't forget favors." Her smile was warm, but her fingers lingered a second too long, as if passing an invisible message. Mia nodded, forcing a smile, but her mind raced. The district's underbelly wasn't news to her. Growing up with immigrant parents, she'd heard the whispers of Yakuza influence in the ports. How shipments of electronics and fish hides masked other cargo. But this, being pulled into it over a crosswalk? The car turned onto Yesler Way, weaving toward the waterfront where the Space Needle's silhouette loomed against the stormy sky. Mr. Ellis cleared his throat. "Miss Chen, Mr. Tanaka's organization handles legitimate imports, tea, silks, automotive parts, but competition is fierce. Your assistance today. It aligns with our code, protection for loyalty." He slid a non-disclosure agreement across the seat, the paper crisp under the dome light. "Sign this, and we ensure your safety. Debts, rent, those burdens lighten." Mia scanned the legalese, her waitress' sharp eyes catching the fine print, confidentiality, no discussions of family matters, and a vague clause about ongoing security. It smelled like a trap, wrapped in benevolence. "And if I don't sign?" she asked, meeting Tanaka's eyes for the first time up close. They were dark pools, reflecting the passing street lamps, holding secrets she'd only glimpsed in gangster films. "Then you walk away," he said simply, "but the street has eyes. Walk wisely." The car slowed as they approached a nondescript warehouse district. The briny scent of the Sound, seeping through the vents, mingled with the diesel rumble of container ships moaning in the distance. Floodlights swept the docks, illuminating stacks of crates stamped with kanji and hangul, imports from Yokohama and Incheon. This wasn't dinner at a fancy spot. It was his territory, raw and unyielding. They pulled into a gated lot, the barrier rising with a mechanical whine. Security men nodded from posts, their radios crackling faintly. "Clear on the east flank." One scanned a license plate reader as the sedans parked in formation. Mia's heart thudded as she stepped out, the chill wind off the water whipping her hair, carrying the metallic tang of rain on rusting shipping containers. Tanaka offered his arm, not grabbing but guiding, and she took it, more for balance than anything, her sneakers squelching on the gravel. Inside the warehouse, the air shifted to something warmer, industrial fans humming overhead to circulate the scent of oiled machinery and fresh varnish. It wasn't a dockside dive. Partitions created a private mezzanine overlooking the loading bays, furnished with low tables and tatami mats that evoked old Tokyo. A spread waited, steaming bowls of bibimbap and sashimi, bottles of sake chilled in ice. But Mia's eyes snagged on the details, the wall-mounted screens displaying live feeds from port cameras, angles on manifests scrolling in Japanese. And there, half hidden by a screen, a ledger bound in black leather, its pages marked with tabs. As they sat, Tanaka poured sake with ritual precision, the liquid glinting amber. "To debts repaid," he toasted, clinking her cup. Mrs. Kim ate quietly, but her gaze darted to the ledger now and then. Mr. Ellis excused himself to handle calls, slipping away with his briefcase. Conversation flowed haltingly. Mia shared snippets of her life. The dim sum rush, her mom's lingering illness, the grind of tips in a city eating its young. Tanaka listened, his scar tightening as he spoke of his own losses. A brother lost to a rival's blade years back, shaping his rule. No innocence touched, only the guilty. But unease crept in, like the fog rolling off the Sound. During a lull, Mia excused herself to the restroom, navigating polished concrete halls lit by sodium bulbs. In the mirror, she splashed water on her face, the cold shock grounding her. As she dried her hands, a door creaked nearby. Not the lawyer's office, but a side room. Voices murmured, low and urgent. "Plate from the alley cam matches the Ito Cruise van." They tailed her after the crosswalk. A pause. Then Tanaka's voice, sharper. "Double the watch on her apartment, and check the tea box. Could be a plant." Mia's breath caught. The tea box, Mrs. Kim's gift. She patted her pocket. It was still there, heavier now with implication. Had it been tampered with? A tracker. She slipped back to the table, but not before glimpsing a burner phone on the sideboard. Its screen lighting up with an incoming text. Asset secured. Move on, Kim. Dinner resumed, but the air crackled with subtext. Tanaka's coded gesture to a guard, a subtle tilt of his head, sent the man checking perimeter cams. Mrs. Kim's story shifted slightly. Earlier she'd said she was shopping alone, but now mentioned a delivery that ran late. Inconsistencies like cracks in a facade. As plates cleared, Tanaka leaned in. Stay tonight. Safer. We talk more tomorrow. His tone brooked no argument, but his eyes held a flicker. Protectiveness or possession? Mia's autonomy clashed against the pull. She needed the security, the debt relief, but at what cost? Outside, thunder rumbled over the docks, and in the shadows of a stacked container, a figure watched through binoculars, relaying coordinates via earpiece. Who in the Ito crew had gotten this close, and what exactly had Mia walked into by accepting that simple box? The warehouse's mezzanine felt like a fragile sanctuary amid the ceaseless hum of the docks below, where forklifts beeped warnings and cranes groaned under the weight of midnight shipments. Mia sipped the sake slowly, its warmth spreading through her chest like a tentative truce, but her fingers itched to clutch the tea box in her pocket. The lacquered surface was smooth, unassuming, yet the overheard words echoed in her mind. A plant. From whom? Mrs. Kim, with her kind eyes and jasmine scent, or someone pulling strings from the shadows. Tanaka sat across from her, his broad frame casting a subtle shadow over the low table, while Mrs. Kim nibbled at a slice of pickled radish, her gaze distant, fixed on the scrolling manifests on the wall screens. "You're quiet," Tanaka observed, his voice low, cutting through the distant clatter of a loading bay door. He set down his chopsticks with deliberate care, the porcelain clicking softly. "The food not to your liking? Or is it the company?" Mia met his stare, searching for cracks in that watchful facade. The scar along his jaw seemed deeper in the amber glow of the lanterns overhead. "It's everything," she admitted, her words measured, like navigating a minefield. "One minute I'm dodging puddles on King Street. The next I'm signing NDAs in a warehouse that looks like it could load a ghost ship, and that box." She trailed off, pulling it from her pocket and placing it on the table, the wood absorbing the faint thud. "Your man mentioned checking it. Why?" Mrs. Kim's hand froze mid-air, her eyes sharpening before she resumed eating, but Tanaka's expression didn't flicker. He reached for the box, turning it over in his palms with the precision of someone who inspected cargo manifests daily. "Precautions," he said simply, sliding open the lid to reveal loose leaves of green tea, fragrant and unremarkable. Beneath them, nothing, no hidden compartments, no slips of paper. But he didn't hand it back immediately. Instead, he nodded to a guard lingering at the edge of the mezzanine, who approached with a small device, a scanner that beeped faintly as it swept the box. "Clean." "In our line, gifts can carry more than gratitude, trackers, poisons, messages." The guard retreated, his radio murmuring static, but Mia caught a snippet. "No signals, perimeter holding." Her pulse steadied fractionally, yet the air thickened with the warehouse's undercurrents, the oily tang of machinery mixing with the salty brine wafting up from the sound, where foghorns bleated like wary sentinels. She thought of her apartment, the stack of bills on her kitchen counter, the way debt collectors' voices had turned from polite to predatory. Signing the NDA had bought her time, a promise of relief in exchange for silence, but autonomy gnawed at her. Was this protection or a gilded cage? Tanaka closed the box and pushed it back toward her. "Keep it." Mrs. Kim meant well, but trust is earned, not given. His tone carried that internal code she was beginning to sense, a restraint forged from loss, the brother he'd mentioned earlier. Cut down in a turf skirmish over port access codes. No innocence, he'd implied, but where did she fit in that ledger? As they talked, the conversation skirted the edges of his world. Rival factions like the Ito crew, who muscled in on shipping routes with fake manifests and bribed port officials. The endless dance of surveillance, from dash cams to hacked traffic feeds. Mia shared little in return. Her shifts at Golden Lotus, the ache of watching her mum's health fade without insurance to buffer the blows. But his questions probed gently, revealing her independence like a fault line. Mrs. Kim excused herself then, claiming fatigue, and a guard escorted her to a side room, partitioned off with sliding screens. The old woman's steps were slower now, her hanbok whispering against the tatami, but as she passed, she squeezed Mia's shoulder, a gesture warm yet weighted like an unspoken plea. Alone with Tanaka, the mezzanine felt smaller, the screens flickering with live feeds. A sedan idling too long at the gate, its plate number flashing in red, unregistered, flagged. "Watchers," Tanaka murmured, rising to his feet. He moved to the railing, overlooking the bays where workers in high-vis vests stacked crates under floodlights, their shadows stretching long across the wet concrete. Ito's style. They probe weaknesses. Mia's stomach twisted. Because of me. Or her. She joined him at the rail, the metal cool under her hands, vibrating faintly with the rumble of a distant generator. Below, the air hummed with activity, sodium lights casting harsh pools on puddles that mirrored the stormy sky, the scent of diesel and salt water clinging to everything. Tanaka's arm brushed hers accidentally, a spark of tension that spoke of possessiveness tempered by caution. He wanted to shield her, she sensed, but his world demanded loyalty and hers prized freedom. "Both," he replied, his voice a rumble matching the thunder rolling in from the sound. "Aunt Kim's been a target since my uncle's days, old grudges over Busan routes. Your kindness. It drew lines they didn't expect." He turned to her, closer now, the sandalwood of his cologne cutting through the industrial haze. "Stay, let my men secure your place first. One night." The plea in his eyes clashed with command, pulling at her resolve. Financial need whispered yes, the NDA's fine print promised cleared debts, but ethics rebelled. She wasn't a pawn in their feuds. Before she could answer, Mr. Ellis reappeared, his face drawn, tablet in hand. "Sir, intercepted message from a burner. Ito's moving on the east dock. False manifest diversion, but it's a cover. They're asking about the Waitress." Tanaka's jaw tightened, the scar pulling taut. He barked orders in Japanese to the guards, who fanned out like coordinated shadows, radios crackling with guard rotations and camera angles. "Escort her to the safe room," he told Ellis. Then to Mia, "This isn't over. Go." As they hurried down a concrete stairwell, the warehouse lights flickered. A brief blackout, generators kicking in with a groan. Mia's heart raced, the air growing stuffy, laced with the acrid whiff of sparking wires. Was it a storm surge or sabotage? Ellis's hand on her elbow was firm, guiding her past locked doors etched with access codes, but she glimpsed a side panel, a tampered alarm wire snipped clean. Human error or a turncoat inside. They reached a reinforced door at the tunnel level, subterranean access to the waterfront, dimly lit by emergency bulbs that buzzed like angry hornets. "This way out if needed," Ellis said, punching in a code, the lock beeping green. But as the door hissed open, revealing a narrow passage echoing with dripping water, a distant crash echoed from above. Crates toppling, shouts rising, infiltration. Mia's mind reeled. The T-box was safe, but the real threat was closing in, organized and relentless. Had Mrs. Kim known, drawing her into this web of debts and watchers? And as Tanaka's voice barked commands overhead, would his code protect her or claim her in the chaos? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The tunnel's emergency lights cast erratic shadows on the damp concrete walls, their red glow pulsing like a warning heartbeat. Mia's sneakers splashed through shallow puddles, the echo amplifying the distant shouts filtering down from the warehouse above. Sharp commands in Japanese, the metallic clang of metal on metal. Ellis gripped her arm tighter than necessary, his breath coming in short bursts as he hustled her forward, the reinforced door sealing behind them with a hydraulic hiss. The air down here was cooler, laced with the musty scent of mildew and stagnant water from the sound seeping through cracks in the foundation. Somewhere ahead, a pump hummed rhythmically, fighting back the tide that lapped at Seattle's underbelly. "Keep moving," Ellis urged, his voice a strained whisper over the low buzz of his earpiece. The lawyer's usual polish had cracked, sweat beaded on his forehead despite the chill, and his briefcase swung awkwardly in his free hand, bumping against his thigh. Mia yanked her arm free, not harshly, but enough to reclaim space. Autonomy surged through her like adrenaline. She wasn't some asset to be herded. "What the hell is happening up there? And don't give me legalese, tell me straight." Ellis glanced back, his glasses fogging slightly in the humid air. They passed a junction where conduits snaked along the ceiling, dripping condensation that plinked into unseen drains. Ito's probing the perimeter. That crash, likely a diversion. Toppled crates to draw guards away from the East Bay. "We've got rotations every 15 minutes, but they're exploiting the storm's interference on the cams." He fumbled for his tablet, the screen illuminating his face in a harsh blue. A quick swipe showed a grainy feed, shadows darting near the loading docks, a guard's flashlight beam cutting through the fog. No clear faces, but the license plate of a van, partially obscured, flashed. Ends in 47, matching the alley cam's earlier flag. Mia's mind pieced it together, Waitress sharp from years of reading customer tells, the fidgety tourist hiding a bad tip, the regular whose story shifted mid-meal. Ellis's pace quickened at the mention of the plate, his eyes darting to the walls as if expecting listeners, behavioral tell, too eager to explain or deflect. "You knew about the watchers before dinner, didn't you? That burner text, asset secured, move on, Kim. Was that about her or me?" He hesitated, the tunnel narrowing as they approached a grated gate, its lock glowing green under a keypad. "Intercepted chatter, nothing more. Mr. Tanaka's code is clear. Protect the family first. Mrs. Kim's ties go back decades, old alliances with Korean syndicates that the Ito resent. Your involvement. It escalated things." The gate creaked open, revealing a wider passage lined with rusted pipes, the air growing saltier, carrying the faint rumble of waves against pilings outside. Mia's pulse thrummed in her ears. The tea box in her pocket felt like a talisman now, innocent or not. Gratitude had pulled her here, but curiosity and the promise of debt relief kept her from bolting. They emerged into a sub-level garage, dimly lit by sodium lamps that buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across parked sedans and stacks of shipping manifests in wire bins, discreet ledgers yellowed with use, tabs marking routes from Incheon to Tacoma. Rain hammered the ceiling like impatient fingers, the storm outside turning hazardous, jamming any quick exit to the waterfront. Ellis punched a code into another panel, summoning an elevator, but the car didn't descend. "Power fluctuation," he muttered, checking his tablet again. "Generators holding, but the blackout up top bought them time." A muffled explosion rocked the structure, not thunder but controlled, like a staged diversion breaching a side door. Shouts echoed closer now, Tanaka's voice barking orders. "Flank the tunnel! Secure the aunt!" Mia's stomach knotted. Possessiveness from the Oyabun felt like a double-edged blade, his world demanding loyalty she hadn't pledged. Yet in the chaos, a pull toward him stirred. Born of shared glances over Seiki, his restrained power clashing with her independence. Financial need aside, moral duty tugged, Mrs. Kim's pat on her knee, the old woman's eyes pleading for aid beyond a crosswalk. Ellis drew a compact pistol from his briefcase. Standard issue, matte black, no flourish, checking the chamber with practiced efficiency. Backups en route. Convoy from the North Docks. 5 minutes. But his free hand trembled slightly. A tell Mia clocked immediately. Prudence versus ambition, or fear of the pull between factions. She backed toward a stack of crates, her eyes scanning the garage. A side door ajar, leading to service stairs, and there, tucked behind a manifest bin, a discarded burner phone, screen cracked but active, displaying a partial message. Turncoat confirmed. Ellis handles extraction. Delay, if clear. Her breath hitched. The lawyer, or misdirection? Before she could confront him, the elevator dinged, doors sliding open to reveal 2 of Tanaka's guards, faces grim, radios crackling. Ito van breached gate. Plate 47 confirmed. 1 down, non-lethal. They waved them in. The car jolting upward as gunfire popped distantly. Suppressed rounds, professional hits aimed at knees, not kills, per the code. Mia pressed against the wall, the metal cool through her damp shirt, the scent of gun oil faint but unmistakable. The doors opened to pandemonium on the mezzanine, overturned tables, sake spilling like blood across tatami, guards repositioning behind partitions. Tanaka stood at the center, directing with coded gestures, tilted head for east flank, fist for hold fire, his suit jacket torn at the sleeve, a shallow cut grazing his forearm. No gore, just the sting of exposure. Mrs. Kim huddled nearby, a guard shielding her, her handbook disheveled but eyes fierce. "Mia!" the old woman called, relief flooding her voice. Tanaka's gaze locked on Mia as she stepped out, a flicker of something raw, relief or claim, crossing his features. "You're safe," he said, crossing to her in 2 strides, his hand hovering near her shoulder without touching. The possessiveness warred with restraint, his code bending but not breaking. Ito wanted leverage. The box was clean, but they tailed you from the street, using misses. Kim as bait. Ellis cleared his throat behind her, tablet clutched like a shield. "Sir, the convoy's delayed. Storms flooding the access road." Mia shot him a sidelong glance, the burner's message burning in her mind. Trust versus suspicion. Was he the turncoat, or just a lawyer out of his depth? Thunder crashed outside, lights flickering again as the warehouse groaned under the onslaught. Guards rushed to barred windows, spotting taillights weaving through the fog. Rival escort or rescue? Tanaka pulled Mia aside, his voice low amid the rising tension. "We extract now, together." But as the first shots pinged off the exterior, who among them had sold the access codes, tipping the Ito to this exact moment? The mezzanine's lanterns swayed like pendulums in the storm's fury, their light fracturing across shattered porcelain and scattered manifest pages that fluttered like startled birds. Tanaka's hand finally settled on Mia's shoulder, firm, grounding, a silent vow amid the chaos. But she shrugged it off gently, her independence flaring like a struck match. The warehouse shuddered as another suppressed shot cracked outside, the sound muffled by the rain's relentless drum on the metal roof. Guards repositioned with fluid efficiency, their radios a staccato chorus. East flank holding, 2 tangos down, non-lethal. No innocence, Tanaka's code held, even as the Ito pressed their advantage, using the blackout's aftershocks to slip past guard rotations. "We go through the tunnels," Tanaka said, his voice cutting through the din like a blade through fog. He nodded to the 2 guards from the elevator, who flanked Mrs. Kim, helping her to her feet with deference. The old woman's face was pale but resolute, her jade clip askew, yet she clutched her canvas bag tighter, as if it held more than memories. Ellis hovered nearby, his pistol holstered now, but his eyes darted too frequently to the side door, Mia noted, the behavioral tell sharpening her suspicion. The burner's message replayed in her mind. "Turncoat confirmed. Ellis handles extraction." Coincidence, or the key to this infiltration? Mia scooped up the tea box from the table, slipping it into her pocket alongside her phone, its battery low. Signal jammed by the storm or deliberate interference. "I'm not running blind," she said, meeting Tanaka's gaze. The scar on his jaw caught the flickering light, a reminder of his losses, the brother whose death had forged this restrained power. Loyalty pulled at her, gratitude for the old woman twisting into something deeper. But fear of entanglement, of becoming his in this web of debts and watchers, clashed hard. "If Ellis is leading us out, I want answers. That phone in the garage, who left it?" Tanaka's eyes narrowed, appraising her with that watchful intensity. But he didn't dismiss her. "Check it on the move." He gestured sharply, and the group descended the stairwell again. Footsteps echoing off concrete walls, slick with condensation. The air grew thicker, laced with the sharp ozone of sparking electrics and the briny undercurrent from the tunnels below. Floodlights outside the barred windows revealed the docks in turmoil, containers stacked like monolithic sentinels, their shadows dancing in the wind-whipped rain, while a van, plate ending in 47, idled at the perimeter fence, its headlights cutting through the haze like accusatory fingers. In the sub-level garage, the sodium lamps hummed erratically, casting the space in a jaundiced glow that made Ellis's face look ghostly. He beelined for a black SUV at the far end, keys already in hand, too prepared, Mia thought, her pulse quickening. The discarded burner lay where she'd seen it, screen dim but alive. She snatched it up as they piled in, the device cool and heavy, its cracked display showing the partial text and a call log. 3 outgoing numbers, one time-stamped just before the crash. The last contact. E confirmed delay on convoy, Ito inbound. Ellis slid into the driver's seat, engine roaring to life with a throaty growl. But Tanaka's hand shot out, gripping the lawyer's shoulder. "Who called?" The Oyabun's tone was ice over steel, his code demanding truth under pressure. Mrs. Kim leaned forward from the back, her eyes locking on Ellis with a mix of sorrow and steel. Old grievances resurfacing, perhaps a past betrayal in those Busan roots. The lawyer's hands whitened on the wheel, sweat tracing his temple. "Sir, it's the storm. Comms glitch. I was coordinating with port security." But his voice cracked, the tell undeniable, and Mia's stomach dropped. Ambition versus prudence. Ellis, the pale, bespectacled outsider, tempted by rival offers. A discreet ledger in his briefcase, maybe, trading access codes for a cut of Ito shipments. Tanaka released him, but signaled a guard in the trailing sedan via radio. "Tail him! Full scan!" The convoy lurched forward as the garage door ground open, rain sluicing in like a veil. Tires sprayed gravel, the SUV fishtailing onto the access road where puddles had deepened into treacherous pools, the storm turning the waterfront into a labyrinth of flooded paths and jammed exits. Headlights pierced the downpour, illuminating stacks of crates lashed against the wind. Their manifests whipping free, pages of kanji detailing tea routes that masked other cargo. Behind them, the warehouse's floodlights swept erratically, a botched escort unfolding as Ito shadows pursued, their van weaving through the fog with predatory grace. Mia's phone buzzed once, a weak signal breaking through, displaying a text from an unknown number. "Walk away from Tanaka. Debt collectors incoming, your mom's bills. Coercion or another plant?" She showed it to Tanaka, who cursed softly in Japanese, his possessiveness flaring as he pulled her closer in the seat, the leather creaking under the motion. "They're targeting your life. Stay with me. I'll clear it all." The offer tempted, a future of protection amid his world, but her ethics rebelled. She wasn't trading autonomy for a gilded shield. A jolt rocked the SUV, tires hitting a submerged barrier, perhaps deliberate, staged by the rivals. Ellis swerved, the vehicle hydroplaning toward a chain-link fence bordering the sound, waves crashing against pilings below like thunderous applause. "Road's compromised!" he shouted, but his glance in the rear view held a flicker of calculation. The trailing sedan radioed, "Van closing, shots fired at tires." Suppressed pops pinged off the undercarriage. The environment itself hazardous, storm and sabotage blurring lines. Tanaka drew his own sidearm, compact, silenced, firing a warning burst out the window, the recoil steady in his grip. "Push through!" Guards in the escort returned fire. A controlled exchange that forced the Ito back without escalation, honoring the fragile code. Mrs. Kim gripped Mia's hand, her voice a whisper over the roar. "He protects what's his, but you choose your path, child." The words carried weight, a subtle behavioral tell from the old woman. Had she orchestrated the crosswalk, calling in this debt to draw Mia into their fold? They burst onto Yesla Way, the city lights a blurry sanctuary ahead, but the burner in Mia's lap lit up again. Incoming call from the suspect number. She answered on speaker, a distorted voice rasping, "The lawyer sold the codes. Extract him, or lose the aunt." Partial discovery hit like a wave. Who was the true turncoat? And as the convoy raced toward a safe house in the hills, would Tanaka's internal rule bend to save them all, or claim another loss in the shadows? The SUV barreled through the storm-lashed streets of Seattle's waterfront, tires slicing through sheets of rain that blurred the world into a watercolor smear of neon and shadow. Mia's fingers tightened around the burner phone, its cracked screen still glowing with the call's aftermath. The distorted voice's ultimatum, hanging in the air like smoke from a suppressed round. "Extract him, or lose the aunt." The words twisted in her gut, amplifying the roar of the engine and the relentless patter against the roof. Tanaka sat rigid beside her, his sidearm holstered but hand resting on the grip, eyes fixed on the rear view where the trailing sedan's headlights pierced the downpour like defiant beacons. Mrs. Kim's grip on Mia's hand hadn't loosened, her gnarled fingers a bridge between generations of guarded secrets, while Ellis drove with white-knuckled focus, the wipers slapping a frantic rhythm. "Pull over," Tanaka commanded, his voice a low thunder that cut through the chaos. No room for debate. It was the Oyabun's code in action. Truth extracted before blood, restraint over rashness. The lawyer's shoulders tensed visibly, a behavioral tell as clear as the flickering dashboard lights reflecting off his fogged glasses. The convoy slowed on a desolate stretch of Alaskan Way, the sound's waves crashing against the seawall below like accusations, the briny spray mingling with the exhaust curling from the tailpipe. The trailing sedan boxed them in, guards spilling out with weapons drawn, their rain-slicked jackets gleaming under sodium lamps that hummed erratically in the wind. Ellis killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the storm's howl and the distant wail of a foghorn. "Sir, this is madness. The safe house is 10 minutes out. Ito's van is still on us." His protest rang hollow, laced with the tremor of a man cornered by his own ledger. Tanaka didn't respond immediately. Instead, he nodded to the lead guard, a burly man named Kato, whose earpiece crackled with updates. "Perimeter cams show the van peeling off, diversion holding, but we've got a tail on foot from the docks." Kato stepped forward, rifle slung low, and yanked open Ellis's door, the rain gusting in like an intruder. Mia watched, heart pounding against her ribs, the leather seat creaking under her shifting weight. Autonomy urged her to intervene. This wasn't her fight, yet the pull of loyalty to Mrs. Kim and something unspoken with Tanaka rooted her in place. The old woman whispered in Korean, a string of words Mia half understood from her parents' stories. "Betrayal cuts deepest in family." Ellis stumbled out, hands raised, his briefcase tumbling into a puddle where it bobbed like a sinking ship. It's not what you think," he stammered, water streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat of exposure. Tanaka exited gracefully, his loafers splashing into the shallow flood pooling on the asphalt, the scar on his jaw stark against his rain-dampened skin. He retrieved the burner from Mia's outstretched hand, holding it up like evidence in a dimly lit courtroom. "This says otherwise. 3 calls, time to the breach. Your number's in the log. The Oyabun's tone was even, but the undercurrent of restrained fury spoke of his past loss. The brother, taken by a turncoat's tip, shaping this unyielding rule. No innocence, but traitors paid in full. Ellis's eyes darted to the briefcase, now being rifled by Cato, who pulled out a slim notebook, discreet ledger, pages filled with scrawled access codes and shipping manifests. Ito's stylized ink stamp, faint but damning on the margin. It was a one-time thing, Ellis confessed, voice breaking as guards patted him down, finding a second burner tucked in his coat, active, screen lighting with an incoming text. Payment wired. Confirm extraction. The pieces clicked for Mia. Human error in the lawyer's ambition, trading Tanaka's port rotations for rival cash. The storm's blackout, a perfect cover for the infiltration. No high-tech wizardry, just bribed insiders and jammed signals from cheap jammers hidden in the van. They threatened my family. Debts like yours, Mia. I thought I could control it. Tanaka's expression hardened, possessiveness flaring, as he glanced back at the SUV where Mia sat with Mrs. Kim. You sold us for scraps. The aunt was the target. Old grudge from Busan, her late husband's roots that Ito still covets. But you brought the waitress into it, using her as bait after the crosswalk. He gestured sharply, and Cato zip-tied Ellis's wrists, the plastic biting into skin with a zip-like tearing fabric. No violence yet, just the weight of consequence, the code demanding confession over chaos. Mrs. Kim climbed out then, her handbox sodden but posture unbowed, approaching Ellis with a sorrowful gaze. You were like a nephew once. Why? The lawyer sagged against the seawall, rain sluicing over him. Power shifted. Ito offered security, real money, not your endless codes and favors. But his words faltered under Tanaka's stare, the internal betrayal cracking his facade. Mia stepped into the deluge, the chill seeping through her clothes, carrying the metallic tang of wet pavement and distant diesel. Fear warred with her ethics. This world of rival factions and subtle tells had ensnared her, yet gratitude for the old woman's kindness and the magnetic pull of Tanaka's restrained strength tugged her forward. You texted my phone too, she accused, holding up her device, the unknown number glaring, trying to scare me off or pull me in. Ellis met her eyes, defeated. Scare you, make you run, expose Tanaka's soft spot. The partial discovery landed like a gut punch. The threat was organized, Ito weaving Mia into their web as leverage, her simple act of kindness a spark in a powder keg of old debts. Tanaka pulled her back gently, his hand on her elbow a claim tempered by care, the sandalwood of his cologne cutting through the storm's brine. Enough. We move. Guards bundled Ellis into the trailing sedan for questioning at a black site. Logistics of containment, no loose ends, while the convoy reformed, engines growling back to life. They raced inland toward the safe house in Capitol Hill, the roads winding uphill through flooded gutters and sodium-lit alleys where shadows lingered too long. Mia's mind raced with the human conflicts, Tanaka's loyalty to his family clashing against her fear of possession, the promise of cleared debts a tempting chain. Mrs. Kim patted her knee again in the back seat, whispering, He sees in you what I lost, a chance at something real. But as the safe house loomed, a fortified brownstone with barred windows and humming generators, the radio crackled. Ito's not done. Second team inbound. Manifests show a truck blocking the hill road. Thunder rolled anew, the environment turning lethal with slick curves and zero visibility. Tanaka's jaw set, his code tested. Protect the innocents, even as sacrifice loomed. Who had warned Ito of the extraction route, and with Ellis contained, what deeper betrayal still lurked in the ledgers waiting to be burned? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The safe house's silhouette emerged through the sheeting rain like a fortress carved from the hillside. Its brownstone facade unassuming under the sodium haze of Capitol Hill's street lamps, but the radio's crackle shattered the fragile calm. Second team confirmed. Truck blocking the access curve. Heavy rain masking their approach. Cams show 3 vehicles, Ito markings on the lead. Tanaka's hand tightened on the door handle, his scar pulling taut as the SUV crested the final rise. Tires hydroplaning on the flooded asphalt. The storm had turned the winding road into a gauntlet. Puddles deepening into deceptive traps, visibility reduced to a tunnel of headlights piercing the downpour. Mia pressed against the window, the glass fogged with their collective breath, the scent of wet leather and tension thick in the cabin. "Flank it!" Tanaka ordered into his earpiece, voice steady but laced with the edge of tested restraint. The trailing sedan accelerated, its engine a low growl syncing with the thunder rumbling overhead. Mrs. Kim's fingers dug into Mia's arm, not in fear, but resolve. Her eyes reflecting the dashboard glow like polished jade. "They never learn," she murmured. The words carrying the weight of decades, old Busan roots, where her husband's alliances had first drawn Ito's ire. A legacy of manifests and whispered pacts that Tanaka now guarded with his code. No innocence, but the line blurred when family was the prize. Ellis was secured in the rear vehicle, his betrayal exposed like a snipped wire, but the radio's warning hinted at deeper rot. Who had leaked the safe house route? A guard's rotation compromised, or another ledger hidden in the warehouse's shadows? Mia's mind raced, piecing the investigative thread. The alleycam's plate, the burner's logs, Ellis's trembling tells, all pointing to organized pressure from rivals, exploiting human cracks. Her own phone, silenced now, weighed in her pocket beside the tee-box, a symbol of unintended debts, her kindness at the crosswalk igniting this chain. The lead truck loomed ahead, a boxy silhouette straddling the narrow curve, its hazard lights flashing mockingly through the rain. No overt aggression yet, just a blockade forcing a choice, ram through or detour into exposed alleys where watchers could pick them off. Tanaka leaned forward. "Kato, take the shoulder, wide berth." The guard in the trailing car acknowledged, but as the SUV swerved, the truck's doors flung open, figures emerging with suppressed rifles, beams from tactical lights slicing the fog. Shots pinged off the chassis, tires targeted, not passengers, the controlled fire a nod to the fragile underworld truce, but the intent clear. Immobilize. Extract. "Down!" Tanaka barked, pulling Mia low as the windshield spiderwebbed from a glancing hit. The jolt of impact rocked them. The SUV clipping a guardrail, sparks flying as metal grated concrete. Ellis's confession had bought time, but this was the climax of the night's unraveling. A botched escort turned race against the storm's fury and rival logistics. The trailing sedan returned fire. Bursts lighting the night in staccato flashes, forcing 2 figures back into cover behind the truck. Mrs. Kim whispered a prayer in Korean, her canvas bag clutched like an anchor, while Mia's heart hammered, autonomy screaming to fight her own way out. But loyalty binding her to this found circle. Tanaka grabbed the radio. "Call the secondary convoy, north side extraction, and burn the manifests at the warehouse, no traces." His code shone through the chaos. Protect the core, sacrifice the spoils. The SUV fishtailed past the blockade, gravel spraying as it mounted the curb, the sound's distant roar fading behind the city's uphill clamor. But the cost mounted, a tire blew with a sharp pop. The vehicle listing as Ellis's earlier delay had shaved precious minutes from reinforcements. Exposure hit hard. Mia glimpsed a face in the truck's cab. Familiar, a port worker from the warehouse feeds, another turncoat bought with Ito promises. They abandoned the SUV at the safe house gate, guards spilling out to cover their sprint across the rain-slicked lawn, the brownstone security lights flaring to life. Inside, the air was dry and fortified, humming generators, barred doors clicking shut, the faint scent of cedar from hidden panels. Tanaka ushered Mrs. Kim to a secure room, then turned to Mia in the dimly lit foyer, rain dripping from his hair, his suit clinging like a second skin. "It's over," he said, but his eyes held the night's toll, a shallow graze on his arm from the garage skirmish, now bandaged hastily, and the deeper wound of betrayal. Ellis sold the route for a payout, but the worker, he'll be handled. No more leaks. Mia's breath came ragged, the adrenaline ebbing to reveal the human pull, his possessiveness, once a threat, now a shield forged in shared peril. "You could have left me at the street," she said, voice steady despite the chill seeping into her bones. "Why drag me into this?" He stepped closer, the space between them charged but respectful, his hand brushing hers, a gesture of choice, not claim. "Because you chose first, helping her. It reminded me of what my brother believed. Debts build family, not empires." The revelation settled like clearing fog. The threat had been real, orchestrated by Ito's grudge against Mrs. Kim's legacy, using Mia as unwitting leverage. Victory came scarred. The warehouse manifests torched via remote. Ellis's ledgers seized for leverage, but the cost was trust rebuilt from ashes, exposure of Tanaka's vulnerabilities to rivals who now knew his soft spot. Mrs. Kim emerged then, composed, offering Mia a fresh towel and a cup of the very tea from the box, steeped strong, its jasmine aroma cutting the tension. "We are safe because of you," the old woman said, her smile genuine, no hidden agendas. In the quiet aftermath, as guards swept the perimeter and the storm waned to a drizzle, Tanaka cleared Mia's debts with a single call. Practical logistics. Wire transfers to collectors. No strings beyond a pledge of discretion, but the true treasure unfolded in the unspoken. Protection earned through trial, trust kindled in the tunnels and rain, a future sketched in tentative glances. A pledge to stand together, not as boss and asset, but partners in a world of shadows. Days blurred into a reflective calm. The adventure's echo lingering in Mia's apartment, now free of bill stacks, the district's hum outside a reminder of normalcy reclaimed. Tanaka visited sparingly, their talks over dim sum revealing more than power. His code as legacy, her independence as strength. Loyalty outlasted the raw logistics of ports and ledgers. Memory of that crosswalk wove them into chosen family, where autonomy and possession found balance. Mrs. Kim's jade clip, gifted as thanks, sat on Mia's windowsill, a symbol that simple kindness had transformed them all, outshining any spoils of the night. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.